We have a major update revolving around this Boston Celtics team as an insider revealed that moves are imminent for the Boston Celtics this offseason with a huge trade incoming. And as we all know it, with the Celtics being in these second apron restrictions, this time was going to eventually strike for Brad Stevens and this team to really pivot and decide what they want to do with this squad, specifically with Jayson Tatum as well going down with injury. There's going to be a lot of discourse revolving around this Celtics team this offseason, and we're here to break it down all here on this episode of Celtics Digest. I am Bruce Veliz, and you guys have been absolutely fantastic. You guys have been showing your love and support for Patrick and I over these last couple of videos, letting us know your true thoughts down below in the comment section. And I want to know what you guys ultimately think on this Boston Celtics news today in this little update. So type down below what your thoughts are, and without further ado, we're going to dive in and get into the news at hand today. Make sure to grab that snack, and without further ado, let's explore this Celtics news, as many of us already knew this news and have been well aware that the Boston Celtics are going to have to readjust their roster this offseason. But if you did not know, Celtics obviously being in the second apron and having all these taxpayers and dealing with all these luxury tax stuff is going to be really hard to keep their core tax roster in frame, with guys like Jrue Holiday getting older, Kristaps Porziņģis dealing with injuries, and even with key free agents like Al Horford and Luke Kornet. The ability to lose those guys is going to be detrimental for this core with their weekend front court. So as we all saw, Pat McAfee's show today, Shams Charania was on there talking to the Indiana fans, and he said the Boston Celtics are going to have to make trades. They're definitely going to have a different roster next season. And thank you, Shams. Thank you, Captain Obvious, for letting us know that the Celtics are going to have a different team next season. I did not know that. I clearly did not know that. Even with Jayson Tatum's $60 million contract being there on the bench, clearly with the injury, it is going to have to find some moves to, one, fill in that hole for the Celtics. But not only that, the Celtics have to shed this salary, because one key thing that doesn't really get mentioned in these videos is not only do the second apron implications affect the luxury tax and how much the owners are actually paying for this roster, but it also affects the draft, right? We all know that if the Celtics are in the second apron for multiple seasons, they lose their first round pick and it gets sent all the way to the end of the first round. Imagine a year where the Celtics are set to be pretty solid, but they have injuries, and because they were in the luxury tax trying to win a championship with Jayson Tatum injured, they failed to do so and they lose their pick of a chance of getting a lottery pick all the way sent to the end of the first round. How would that make you feel? For all the fans that are commenting to keep this team intact, it's not possible, ladies and gentlemen. If the Boston Celtics wanted to give Al Horford and Luke Kornet a contract, a veteran minimum contract to bring them back, it would cost them combined $50 million for their two $6 million deals, all with the taxes for the Celtics being in the second apron and how much that affects them into the luxury tax. The team is just not affordable at this point for this squad, and changes are going to have to kind of ensue for this roster. Now, Shams obviously didn't go into detail because Shams doesn't really have any inside sources on the Boston Celtics. He doesn't have that intel. The Celtics move secretly. They move in silence, so there's no any big names that the Celtics are targeting. There's no name that's out there for the Boston Celtics on the trade market. But he did say with Jayson Tatum being out, basically everyone on the roster is available in trade, which I don't think is going to be the truth in all honesty, and we'll get into that in just a little bit here. I think the Celtics mainly have 3 players that they're looking to trade that have some salary, maybe some guys at the lower end of the roster as well that we'll discuss that could be used in some trades. But realistically, I don't see the Boston Celtics overhauling their complete roster and trading some of these main pieces to the core alongside Jayson Tatum to either shed some incredible salary and drop below the aprons and to get into the lottery, because they still want to compete and still want to win and have a pretty solid team built around Tatum when he comes back. But not only just that, the contracts that in Jaylen Brown and Derrick White, which I think they're not going to trade, are very valuable to the Celtics team, and I think they'd have to be incredibly wowed with an offer to even answer the phone call or deal with talks revolving around those 2 players. So once again, let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section. But as we get into it, what could Shams mean? Who does he really speaking of when he says that changes are going to be coming? Well, ladies and gentlemen, I think we kind of have implied already in this video who's not going to be traded and who might potentially be traded from the Celtics team. You want to look at the salary cap for this Celtics team, looking at the multi-years. Obviously, Jaylen Brown and Jayson Tatum got those superstar max extensions these last seasons. I think that both of them are staying. Like I said, a lot of people don't want to keep Jaylen Brown on this team. I don't know why. He won Eastern Conference Finals MVP, Finals MVP for you just last season in the NBA Finals in Game 5. Clearly proved that he could be that number 1 guy. Played in the playoffs with a torn meniscus, and in the community of Boston not only is going to be staying this summer, which if you missed that, check out the video yesterday where we talked about that, but also the impact that he brings to the city of Boston in the community. You saw him at that meet and greet. He was an absolute fantastic piece being there and hanging out with all those fans. I don't want to see Jaylen Brown gone. Jayson Tatum, obviously they're not going to entertain him. Derrick White on a $30 million deal, I think has some incredible value, so I don't see the Celtics trading him alongside Peyton Pritchard on that $7 million deal. But the three names that we could potentially be looking at to see to trade, I think, are Jrue Holiday, Kristaps Porziņģis, and Sam Hauser. Now, if you want to look back at this sheet here, obviously we can see that by trading Jrue Holiday in his $32 million deal, the Celtics would be shedding some salary. Porzingis' $30 million deal and Hauser's $11 million deal, if they were to, even get back some players in those deals, but as much not as value, and shave $10 million in each trade, and Sam Hauser save $3-4 million, that would free up the Celtics that $24 million that would help them drop below this luxury tax apron and right underneath into the first apron there, giving them more flexibility, access to the MLB, able to use trade exceptions and trades, and so much more jazz. Now, obviously, they'd probably look to use that money to bring back Luke and Al, so maybe they'd still have to do some reshuffling with the roster. So that's where you lean into some of the guys towards the bottom of the roster here that I think could still be on the move for the Boston Celtics. You look at contracts and Xavier Tillman and Neemias Queta, guys who have looked good in Boston at some points, but haven't been able to really improve their sticking point in Boston throughout their career. Maybe the Celtics try to use one of those contracts to either get another contract similar to them on a cheap rookie or veteran minimum deal, or they use it to free up some salary and free up some space to either bring in with a draft pick or another free agent that can fill in that role for the Boston Celtics at a little bit better value. I truly do believe that even a guy like Jordan Walsh potentially could be on the trade market, even though I don't want to be saying that. We have seen Baylor Shireman kind of overtake him off that bench in that Celtics rotation, and I do believe that the Celtics feel very confident with Baylor Shireman transitioning as a scorer and a playmaker for this Celtics bench unit, that a guy like Sam Hauser could be used on the trade market, and the Celtics could still find some wing depth and size there to fill in, but could use Baylor Shireman's athleticism and hustle to kind of fill in that role as well, to kind of compensate for the offensive side of things that Sam Hauser does bring for this Celtics team. But like I said, this team is going to be looking to shed salary. It's going to be looking to make moves. I don't think we're going to see, like I mentioned, a Derrick White or a Jaylen Brown trade unless it's something that completely knocks the socks off of Brad Stevens and he cannot refuse that deal. But ultimately, I do expect it to be guys on the edges, right? Guys like Jrue Holiday, Kristaps Porziņģis, guys that were brought in a couple seasons ago. A guy in Sam Hauser who got that big extension last offseason, and potentially even a guy in Jordan Walsh, Xavier Tillman, or even Neemias Queta could be moved from the Celtics team or this offseason to really free up some space on the back end to bring in some other free agents or possibly experiment with some other younger guys in this draft pool that they want to kind of bring up in this youth program. And we'll see how the Celtics realistically look next year. I still think a team led by Jaylen Brown, Derrick White, and other solid pieces around them and quality role players can still finish top 6 in this Eastern Conference next year. And when the Tatum comes back, you ultimately then once again are inserting Tatum to a team that was pretty solid in the Eastern Conference, which will once again elevate it back to a top tier seed in the East. And then the Celtics can reevaluate and figure out, hey, how do we try to add some guys like Porzingis and like Jrue Holiday a couple seasons ago? How do we get those type of role players back on this team to put us over the top and pushing for a championship once again? Once again, guys, thank you guys so much for tuning in. I really do appreciate all your guys' support. Let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section. And once again, we will be live tomorrow for our weekly stream on Wednesday with Patrick and I. So make sure to stay tuned, hit that subscribe button so you can stay up to date with everything revolving around this team. But I'll catch you guys in the next one. Have a great rest of your day, and go Boston Celtics. Peace out, everyone.